International Day of Older Persons is observed on October 1st and serves as a reminder that aging is a global challenge. We are experiencing a demographic composition that we've never before had in the history of humanity. How do we use advanced technology to enable older people to live healthier lives? Moderated by Richard Soll, head of the Boston office and senior advisor of strategic initiatives at WuXi AppTec, our guest speaker, Paul Irving, the chairman of the Milken Institute Center for the Future of Aging, will bring us insights into these questions.
My name is Rich Soll, and I'm head of the WuXi AppTec's Boston office. With me today is Paul Irving, chairman of the Milken Institute Center for the Future of Aging. Good day, Paul.
Hi, Rich. Great to be with you.
It's great to be with you, too. Now, before we get into today's discussion, perhaps you can highlight for our viewers the mission of the center at the Milken Institute.
Sure. Well, we are focused on advancing healthy and productive and purposeful aging, which manifests, Rich, in a series of programs and projects that range from an emphasis on prevention and wellness to addressing the great challenges of dementia, to a focus on the future of retirement and how lives will change with longer lives and with shifting demography around the world. So it's a fairly broad-based series of programs touching really everything that will be affected by really a radical shift in 21st century demography.
From the Milken Institute's perspective, why should we consider aging as a global crisis, as a global challenge?
So, Rich, I think of this in terms of prose. It's hard for me not to think of Dickens in A Tale of Two Cities, or Robert Frost and Two Roads Diverged in a Yellow Wood. As we think about this, what we recognize is that we have choices, and that those choices can lead to really awful outcomes, or could lead to outcomes that enable a new era of flourishing and opportunity for people of all ages. If we don't invest in improving public health, particularly in focusing on prevention and wellness, if we don't reimagine our communities to enable older people to continue to participate and engage and not suffer the outcomes of ageism, if we don't encourage our employers to think about the benefits of older workers and intergenerational workforces, then if we don't invest in science, something that I know you and I both care about in the United States. Obviously, I care a lot about the funding of the National Institutes of Health and the work that bodies like the National Academy of Medicine and others do around healthy longevity. If we don't do all the things that we know can work, by the way, let me add one more: changing our education systems to encourage lifelong learning and reskilling, and recognizing that education is not just important for the young, but is important throughout the life course. If we don't do those things, we will end up with a population that's increasingly sick, that's at the periphery, that's dependent on a shrinking population of younger adults. But if we do those things, then the potential, again, for this powerful possibility of intergenerational connection. And again, I make this point not just because I do work to support older people. I make this point very much for younger people as well, because the possibilities, the longevity economy, I think, are as exciting as any possibility that young people can capitalize on today. New products and services and innovations for older adults. So, long way of saying this is about choices. It's about choices for policymakers and for business leaders and for philanthropists and academics and urban planners and all others. Either we recognize the realities of our shifting demography, get ahead of them, and do what's necessary to prepare for this very new demographic world, or we ignore them at our own peril.
Do you think we're at a crisis situation yet?
Look, I think I'm an optimist at heart, and I think that things are moving. I see innovative thinking. I see creative ideas. We have both the WHO, World Health Organization, and United Nations Decade of Healthy Aging that we are now in. I'm a member of the National Academy of Medicine in the U.S., the National Academy of Medicine Global Commission on Healthy Longevity, focused on many of these things that I've just discussed. So people are talking about this more. More and more creative brains are kind of thinking about new ways and beginning to design new ways to operate to address the realities of population aging. But things just aren't moving fast enough. So we have to accelerate understanding. We have to accelerate awareness. We have to accelerate focus. We have to apply capital. We have to encourage the best minds to focus not just on the challenges, but very much on the opportunities.
Where do you see the largest unmet need for the aging population?
So again, a wide range, and I've kind of alluded to some of them. Certainly, caregiving is a challenge that exists across the world, and with smaller populations of younger adults and much more mobility among families, kind of the traditional family units that oftentimes cared for aging adults, aging parents and grandparents don't exist as much anymore. We know, again, Rich, that this challenge of both the cost and the burdens of the diseases of aging, and while, by the way, I do not believe that aging is a disease, I very much acknowledge that aging is the principal risk factor for disease, not just the chronic disease and the multiple morbidities that we've seen over so many decades, but what we know from the tragic COVID pandemic experience is that older adults were significantly more at risk of hospitalization and death, and particularly those who suffered from chronic disease. Apropos my point about the importance of tackling the issues of prevention and wellness that I think are generally underinvested across the world. So lots of challenges in health, and challenges in education, and challenges in the workforce, and challenges in homes and communities, and challenges in many other domains. But I think, as I've said often, there is a connecting point with all of these, and that connecting point is very sadly ageism. It's a view that somehow older adults have lost utility, they've lost importance. That it's right to kind of excise them from the world. We tend to celebrate youth across the world, and in many ways rightly so, but we ignore the wisdom and the judgment and the value of experience that comes with years having been in workforces and having raised families and having served communities, and that's a loss. If you think about resource challenges across the world, the irony is our only growing natural resource, Rich, is older adults. And the question is, how do we take advantage of that exceptional resource that can not only be of service to itself, but very much to serve younger people and to create a better future for future generations.
And what kind of resources does the Milken Institute bring together to bridge these gaps?
So we do three things, if you kind of think of functions. The first is applied research, the second is convening, and the third is communication strategies. Our objective is not just to spend time within the academy or within the company of experts who spend as much time on these issues as we do, but we want to make sure that that people in media and the policymakers and the people in all kinds of domains who don't focus on aging and longevity risks and opportunities regularly understand and get involved in addressing the challenges and in capitalizing on the opportunities. So communications is an important piece of it. I would say I'm very proud of the reports that we produce. I would encourage any of the viewers of our session to go on our website and to read them. But I think maybe the most important thing we do is convening oftentimes people who don't regularly get together. So Rich, that people in, for example, the medical research complex, or in education, or in economics, oftentimes tend to spend time with their professional colleagues, the people who they're most comfortable with and best understand. But oftentimes solutions are found at the intersection of these issues. We have to understand that if we want to capitalize on the potential of the longevity economy and address the possibilities for older workers and intergenerational workforces, that we have to improve health. We have to improve not just health care, health delivery, and research for cures, but we also have to invest in and successfully invest in prevention and wellness that enables people to function longer, to compress mortality and morbidity, and to create not just longer lives, but better lives. We have to understand that there is an intersection between health and home design, that those who understand the challenges of aging tackle the challenges of homes that tended to be built for a younger population, or streets that were designed for a younger population. And some of this stuff, it's intuitive, but I want to emphasize the fact that it's not just about building better things for older adults. Just two fast examples. If you think about home design, Rich, a doorway that's built for a 25-year-old may not be able to accommodate a wheelchair, but a door that's built for a wheelchair can almost always accommodate a 25-year-old. And a curb cut on a street, if you know what I mean, the curb,
yeah.
the cut at the edge of a curb. A curb cut is not just good for a wheelchair. A curb cut is good for a baby carriage. So thinking about and engaging in older adults in urban design, in product design, in thinking through what the future demography will look like and what it will need, I think again presents economic possibilities, great potential for innovation and economic growth, and again better environments, not just for older people but for younger people as well.
COVID was particularly hard on the elderly population, and really highlights the need and importance of maybe collaboration, investment, and sustainable actions towards healthy aging. And so, what have you learned, let's say, from COVID that could lead to better protection and care for the elderly?
Yeah, it's such an important question. So we know that tragically COVID has had a dramatic impact on older adults and those with comorbidities, particularly. The risks of hospitalization and death across the world much higher for those who are in their later stages of life, and those who have some kind of chronic disease. So there are a whole series of things that I think we've learned, and I would also say, Rich, that we've learned that those who have access to education and understanding of both the risks and opportunities that they can access in the health community have had a much better chance of not only survival but of relatively successful outcomes with this very awful disease. Thing one that we've learned is we've got to tackle chronic disease. In my country, in the United States, obesity is its own pandemic, and we know that's a product of a whole series of things, ranging from lack of health literacy to lack of access to nutritious food, to communities that unfortunately suffer from food deserts. We know that, and I wrote a piece with a prominent scientist on mitigating COVID risk. One of the things that we identified, for example, is hypertension. Fairly easy to treat, relatively easy to monitor, very significant challenge for a number of communities, again, in my country and in other countries as well. How can we make sure that we are getting the necessary medications to those populations, meeting them where they live and where they meet, not just where we live and where we meet, and making sure that they have education about the risks, about medication compliance, and ensuring again that they have access to information. And I think it's caused all of us to think about that. You know, inside the medical complex, I mean, one of the interesting things, one of the positive outcomes, I suppose, of COVID has been the dramatic acceleration in telehealth, right? And being able to see your physician in your living room, but it's also created understanding that telehealth and access to broadband only exists for a certain portion of populations around the world. And I think it's an opportunity for world leaders to say, how can we make sure that these technologies that we know are not just about entertainment or about things that are less important, maybe kind of some of the social networks, but are really about delivery of health information and health evaluation that can be tools for social connection to mitigate the risks of isolation and loneliness. That can be tools for education, not just for kids, but for older adults. How do we make sure that those things are available and accessible to people in communities throughout the world? And I think that's just, you know, kind of a great learning from COVID and one of the great opportunities that we have ahead of us.
Telehealth is just one example of, let's say, technologies that could be important. I mean, in your estimation, how will technology impact healthy aging beyond telehealth?
Radically. You know, in Japan, we already have care bots. We already have robots that are engaged in care activities. In other countries across the world, certainly countries in Asia, and I know colleagues in China are rapidly working on these things. Digital health tools that measure a whole range of physical conditions and can alert your physician, or frankly alert you about the need to deal with issues of diet, that remind you to see your physician, et cetera. There's so many interesting things that are going on. So things that can address care, that can assist those who have disability, that can provide information, that can provide diagnosis and access and evaluation. Again, Rich, I think the challenge is not that there aren't extraordinary brains working on this in great universities across the world and great companies across the world. I think the question is, how do we make sure that these things are usable and understandable and simple and patient and person-centric and accessible for all? And if we can achieve that, then the possibilities are really mind-blowingly exciting. I have hope that these things will be shared and democratized and scaled and spread in ways that can improve the lives of millions and millions, if not billions, of people.
Right. So you mentioned health equity in a way, right? So how would one approach that to ensure, let's say, accessibility and availability?
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, to an extent, this is a question of personal values, right? This is a question of what one believes about our shared responsibility, sense of collective obligation, you know, this notion that we are part of communities and regions and societies, and frankly, a broader world, a world in which we all live, one little planet, with a range of challenges that we share. But I think we also have to make practical, the practical case, and my practical case is pretty simple. I think if you kind of think of the things that affect the success of, the competitiveness of, the progress of companies. You think of financial capital and social capital and human capital. And when I think of those things, I think that the most important differentiators of societies is human capital, and the investment in our populations, in their education, in their health, in their opportunity to advance, and for people to realize their dreams and to contribute to not only better countries but a better world. Those are the things that are going to really change lives in this century and the centuries beyond. So I think it's not just the right thing to do. I think it's smart business to invest in education, public health, and the welfare of our populations.
So what would be your vision for healthy aging in 2030, 10 years from now? And what does healthy aging look like if we were to tackle this successfully?
It's interesting, and again, we are in the decade of healthy aging, 2020 to 2030. There are a range of global initiatives and kind of increasing attention focused on healthy aging, or as some describe, healthy longevity in the next decade. Look, and I know it takes more than 10 years, at least in most places, it takes more than 10 years to engage in radical restructure of for example, physical infrastructure, right, to enable cities and communities and neighborhoods to adapt successfully to the demographic shift. I would say, without being excessively, I could be dreamy, Rich, but I'll try not to be too dreamy. I think maybe the most important thing that we can accomplish in the next number of years, and certainly I hope we make progress again on prevention and wellness, we make progress on scientific advancement, we make progress in technology, we make progress in our cultural norms. I think the most important thing that we could do is to address this challenge of ageism, because I think if we recognize that all of us have a stake in ensuring that people stay healthier longer. Longer lives, lovely, but healthier longer is absolutely a shared interest of everyone across the life course and in every country of the world. I think if we all agree that is something that is a priority for us, and we do the things that are necessary to, again, compress mortality and morbidity, extend healthy longevity, or as some of us describe it, health span, that we begin the process of working on institutions to make sure that universities across the world have intergenerational student bodies, that we continue to learn throughout our lives, that we have the potential for flexible work that enables us to work longer, but that doesn't require it, but enables it and encourages it, that encourages national service, that avoids age segregation, that enables older people and younger people to work together and operate together and serve together. I think if we begin that cultural shift, that a lot of the infrastructure projects that will take longer, that will take oftentimes decades, will kind of follow naturally, because they will adapt to the realities of not just the way we live, but the way we want to live. And by the way, I wrote a piece just last week about kind of tackling age segregation, and again, I think it's very much part of it. We want younger people to understand their aging colleagues, and we want older people to understand the needs and challenges of youth.
Okay, so I want to thank you very much for spending time with us and sharing your perspectives on aging and the needs of the elderly, and the need for driving the science, investment in the science, and driving collaborations to meet the challenges of the aging population. So thank you very much, Paul.
Thank you, Rich. Pleasure to be with you.